Okay, so welcome everybody. Our last class in October, I think it was October 29th of 2019, we went over some pretty deep material, and we wound up doing a little bit of some quantum navigation meditation that was, I got a lot of feedback from it that was pretty profound. And I think this last month has been filled with lots of challenges coming out of nowhere. So it's been filled with opportunities to face the shadow, our own shadow. And so in our last episode, I talked about the importance of working with the shadow, and as we stand, face, embrace what these challenges are, they take us deeper into ourselves, and by going into deeper, we get to see the critical 7 roots of unconsciousness, 7 or 9 roots of unconsciousness. And those are the critical splits, fractures, dissociations that line all of our birth and rebirths, all the way back to the moment when we all went unconscious. And so, in the last episode, we were talking about the 26,000 year cycle. And that 26,000 year cycle, we were coming up from the underside of the galactic disk. And the underside of the galactic disk is most separated consciousness. So it's very masculine, and that's where we, in our unconsciousness, we go out searching for what we feel are our missing parts. And those are the answers to all of our pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, anger. But it comes up in the 7 roots of unconsciousness, as we've talked about this so many times before: guiltiness, powerlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, neediness, nothingness, and so on. And so those critical fractures, splits, dissociations of our unconsciousness, we talked about how that in the top side of the galactic cycle, the 13,000 years above the galactic disk, is feminine, very intuitive and embracive and integrative, very nurturing. And so we feel our connection with all things. So we feel the oneness in all things. But as we start coming down to the midpoint of the galaxy and start to cross over into the underside, we go through stages, and I pointed out the stages, and I think they're called the Treta Yuga. So going through those stages, the stages of changes. And so when you're separating from such divine connection and communion and reverence with all things, you start to feel more and more of the separation. Hence, you try to fix what's going on in the unconsciousness. You're dropping deeper into unconsciousness, so we got to fix this thing I talked about. And that led to the exposure of that wound I was talking about that came up suddenly from the sacrum and the L3, 4, and 5. Lumbar, 3, 4, and 5. Sacrum, S2 and S4 for me, and then over to the left hip. And as I started to work with that by stand, face, embrace, and you can integrate the shadow, But you got to get through the charges first, right? And so that led to me being in a position where you were responsible to everyone, all your constituents. And they came to you because they were feeling the separation too, and they wanted you to fix it. They wanted me to fix it. And we tried everything, we couldn't, so we kept failing. And so you make stories and stories and stories. And those stories create belief systems, and when you create a story and a belief system, you magnetize the emotional equivalent of what you're feeling. So, imagine the compounding of guilt, pain, shame, blame, worthlessness, powerlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, and so on. And so I talked about how as you pass through that treta zone where you're transitioning over, we left a lot of unfinished business as we closed the door on one paradigm and opened the door on another paradigm. And in the coming to the underside of the galaxy, in the greatest separation, in the masculine, in the logic and reason, we had to learn to be working from our head, working from structure, organization, and so on. And so, in that unconsciousness, we dreamed dreams that were based on unconscious forms of convenience. And we were left to go explore those. But now, and we were gathering experience all the while, but now as we're, 2012 approximately, we were crossing the galactic disk and we're coming back up through the Treta zone. Well, what we left on the doorstep of the unfinished business that we left on the doorstep of opening the door to the new paradigm, into the feminine paradigm, into the kind of the golden era. We left a lot of issues there. All right. So this week, it's been this month. This last month, we've been getting prepared. Spirit's been preparing us. And if you've watched these Storm Wisdom evening sessions on the quantum navigation, Spirit's been having me share with you what they thought was important about observing all these different aspects, because it's time to integrate, it's time to wake up. And we need those to pass through that band of the pile we left on the doorstep of unfinished business, so we can enter the door and remain at peace. Now, I talked about in past of these quantum navigation evening sessions.
Thinking about something, sorry.
A good thought coming in.
Yeah.
So, this is our orbit, our galaxy, our solar system's orbit, 13,000 years above, 13,000 years below. This is the galaxy. Well, a couple of things about this that's really important, and that is that there's a torus of energy, and we've shared this so many times. So the projective is the masculine version, which is under the disk. It projects out. So we're moving into the reality, into the void, looking for our perceived missing parts. So it's very projective. And on the upper part of the galactic disk, it is integrative. So it creates that torus field. And there's many, many bands of this. This goes way out These bands are important to understand, and this disk is constantly rotating, so that in between these bands, you're getting a type of energy that's fluctuating, sine wave fluctuating between the different bands. Okay? But it's important to see that this thing is a living organism. This galaxy is a living organism. And so that torus field is very much like this torus model, in that it has a projective side. If we are spinning it, you see a nice golden spiral. And so as this thing is moving, these bands, and this is magnetic bands, electric bands, energetic bands, but they're flowing like this and then coming back in, but the whole thing is spinning. So doesn't it look like a flower? Okay, right here. Petals of a flower. Okay? Very important to understand and see. Now, as I said, when we went unconscious, that sphere, like the crystalline sphere, it fractured from the inside out simultaneously from the outside in. So it fractured systemically. All right. If we're going to heal, then we've got to look at some very important components. And we all know the value of a wine glass, especially now, especially about now. The beauty of a wine glass is one in its cleansing and in its clarity and its cleanliness, but two in its integrity. And so if there were cracks in this chalice, this metaphor of a chalice, if there was cracks in there, it can't hold anything. So those cracks of the roots of unconsciousness are important. And so if we're going to deal with all of those unfinished business on the doorstep of changing the reality, the change in the reality, we have to understand what we're facing, right? And so in the last video that we did last month, I talked about how you go through this once, this cycle of 13,000 years above and 13,000 years below. And chaos. It's chaos. And you do everything you can to bring it back into relative balance, relative peace and harmony, but your soul remembers the union of the sacred, the union of the divine. We didn't have to do anything. It was there on the upper part. We experienced it. But that's not the problem. The problem is when we were changing over and we felt it diminishing. Who'd we blame? Wasn't me. Yeah, right. I swear. I had nothing to do with this.
Oh, no, yeah, right.
Well,
Satan or God or somebody.
Yeah, let's give a name. Blame them. Throw it in their box. Yeah. Now, in the last one, I had been talking about how as we pass through the transitional consciousness, we started to go asleep, and we became aware of the 7 roots of unconsciousness and began to dream all those things. And at the same time, assisting in the process, here's your sacred geometry. If this is a symbol of all these geometries, and remember, each of these geometries is representative of each of the different chakra points. And nested together means they are whole, integrated, one. Okay? So when we dropped down, we started integrated. This is like life up on the upper side of the galactic disk. Life on the underside. All the planets, the gravitational forces, the toroidal forces, the bands, everything is functioning to assist. Go to sleep. And in the go to sleep, it is unconsciousness itself that dreams the guiltiness, the abandonment, betrayal, which leads to the guiltiness, then the powerlessness, worthlessness, neediness, helplessness, hopelessness, and nothingness. And so all of these we get to experience because they're drawing, all the energetics down here is designed to drop you into linearity, so your z-axis comes down. Your z-axis is separated, and you get to experience life, a little bit of each of these chakra points. And we start loading up in between these. And these chakra points, they relate to the different organs in the body, and they relate to the different, where we hold our charges. Now I'm about to restart a Taoist class, and in the Taoist training, we went through a whole process of where you go through these, doing different breathing postures in order to put pressure on the different organs so that it removes the charge from the different areas in between the organs where we store them most. In the Taoist training, we store most of our pains, traumas, stories in our joints. Hence, like in the last Storm Wisdom event last month, I talked about from my sacrum came the ancient experience of me being a female queen, like Egyptian clothing in a temple. I had my own temple. Nobody was there. So, I must have raided. But I was on the floor just in agony, lamenting about this transition, this period in the transition. And as I explained, as I started dealing with the issue, then all of a sudden, at one point, when you got a hold, you're not running away from the 7 roots of unconsciousness, nor your pain from it, well then, it's free to show you what the story was. And so, when I dealt with it, and it wasn't done over a day, it took a couple of weeks actually, of going back, revisiting, taking on more. There's a lot in the trash. Remember I said, left a lot of stuff on the doorstep between the 2 different paradigms. And the first few times you go around the 26,000 year, you can't get it. So you blame yourself. And where do you stick it? You stick it in between the joints. For me, it was in the sacrum. This affected how I could ground, how I could stand solidly in myself. If I had all these belief systems that I took on, because, you know, when we were transiting the Treta of the Yuga system, oh my God, everyone comes to you because you seem to know you're in charge. And you have all those ministers to help out. Well, nothing you could do, even though you tried the most brilliant all the way to the most desperate. Nothing you could do could change it. You weren't supposed to. Out of your control. But you gotta try. Because everyone's coming to you. You need a report. What are you doing? Oh, well, we're trying this, we're trying that. Well, there I was on the floor, and when I could finally see it clearly, and when you see it clearly, you're no longer running. Because you know where the story came from, and how you created it, how you spawned it without seeing the whole picture. Well, now it's time to get rid of that picture. But you can only do it if you accept it. If you accept what you did, if you accept what feelings that were created from the stories you made and the opportunities that came from the stories, thinking you could change the reality. So, when I could begin to see it, when I could begin to embrace it, and to embrace it, you had to have been liable, deeply liable. Otherwise, you just go, I never did that. And you don't think anything of it. I was a good person. Every lifetime. Well, nobody gets out of here without doing unconscious things. And so when I could finally accept that and see what it gave me, I remember I told the story. All of a sudden, I could feel the superposition. I was on the floor, I was the clothes I was wearing, I was the great immaculate statues, I was the entire room, I was Isis coming into the room laughing at myself on the floor. Oh my, don't we take our story so seriously when we're human? And we laugh together. The superposition. You're free. If you own your story, your pains, your shames and stuff. So, as I was saying about that chalice, the beauty of the chalice is in its integrity and transparency. Those are critical. Use that as a metaphor. So, how do we get rid of the splits, fractures, dissociations, and all those stories? What if I tell you you're already healed? Can't believe it. It's too hard to believe. Why? Because of a simple fact. And that fact, I'll use a different board here. In quantum navigation, early on, in the introduction to quantum navigation, which is that 2-day course, I didn't think any of this would become popular, so I didn't video much in those early days. But in those early days, and every once in a while I come across and I speak about the important element for fusion, integration. And that, believe it or not, is in this. This is the X, Y, and Z axes So it denotes height and width, and length and width. Did I say that right? Height and depth, length and width. Height and depth, length and width. However, all of us are quantum, right? We originally came from, you saw that graphic on the beginning, we came from nothingness, and now we're in this linearity with all the entanglements. Well, all of our nothingness comes from the harmonic integration, consciously, of our dualities. So when there's no entanglement between the dualities, they can come home. So until that moment comes, there's unconsciousness that sits at the very center of the integration point. And that unconsciousness acts as a means of turning two horseshoe magnets so that they're opposing each other. So the dualities operate in such a manner where they think they're separate and they have to build experience until they can begin to appreciate that their home is in their opposite. What? They've got to awaken to their opposite. They think they're the whole thing. As an example, we all have our inner child, and it starts our world. And what is it missing? The adult. And no one's there to give it truth of the experience that it's going through. No one's there to steward it for what it needs. Who's got the time? The other part is the adult. The adult is gaining experience. So these two are operating in their own world, and in between them is this unconscious split, and they're this dynamic fighting to come home. But they don't know that they need each other. So they're unconscious of each other, so they keep fighting for dominance. They keep fighting for the attention. Now, over time, one begins to realize that the way home is through the other. Well, the inner child remembers every wound, and it has all the access ways to magic, adventure, life force, joy. And the adult, it understands the overview, comprehensive overview, has wisdom from experience, knows structure, and knows enough to want to know a little ahead of time before it invests in the unknown. So these two are at odds with each other until they finally wake up, and then they realize healing comes. The magnetic attraction comes when they realize that the adult feels all the wounds of the inner child, because it feels all the splits, dissociations, the strangulations of what it's invested in. Remembers the past. The inner child has all the wounds, but doesn't have the comprehensive overview to be able to reframe what it went through. Give it enough wisdom so that it could change how it saw what it saw, felt, and what it created as belief systems from the wounds it experienced. Those are always there. They will always be there until the adult comes back to that inner child and begins to work with it. It's got to create the bridge between these two. So the child has been absent of a caring adult that'll give it the time and attention to help it with its wounds. The adult then already knows that a lot of the things that the child experiences just needs to be reframed because there's a lot more going on and you're blaming yourself for what aren't yours, what isn't yours to be blamed about. And so the adult then needs to communicate to that inner child in the proper setting, especially under a wound that's arising. When it does, and it makes contact with the inner child, and it embraces the inner child, say, I got you. I want to hear all about what's going on with what's coming up for you. What is coming up for you? How did you feel? Who all was involved? And then the adult can help reframe what's going on for the child. Then the child goes, oh, the adult really is caring about me. That's something that's never happened. And so it builds a foundation of trust. Now, this is important because these are duals of each other. If they don't help each other, the issue stays. So the doorway at the center here is blocked and repeats over and over and over again. Now, to bring these two together, and it's very possible to do that, there needs to be sufficient love, unconditional love, imbibing both the adult and the child. Because a lot of our wounds, we have a lot of issues around our wounds: resentment, pain, shame, blame, fear, guilt, grief, anger, even rage. Nobody was there to help me. I was abandoned. I was, pick a story. There's so many of them, and there's the emotional equivalent. And so the child is not going to let go of that. It's protecting it. It thinks it's going to happen again because nobody's been there for it. But under the imbibing of sufficient love, now you're kind of giving the child like an ice cream, something equal to or greater than the pain that it's holding on to. In this case, it's unconditional love, and it hasn't felt that. Not coming from who it needs it most. It needs to have it come from the adult. When it comes from the adult, shown, demonstrated, with absolute resolve. No, I am not moving any far forward until we get together and I hear your stories, validate what you've been through. Yes, it's been awful during that time. Nobody was really there for you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there earlier. I was gaining experience as an adult. But now I feel I can't go any far forward. I keep running into the same wound. So until I help you reframe these things, you and I are both not free. So with that kind of trust and with that kind of sincere communication coming from the adult to the inner child and the imbibing of unconditional love, that makes the child go, okay, well, let's try this out. I want a demo. Let's go take care of something. And that's what we're going to do tonight. That's what is leading here tonight, where I'm leading you tonight. Because if we're going to repair the original chalice at our core, we need transparency and integrity. And the integrity that's needed here is this consciousness that these two belong together. And only in trust then they can begin to come together. So the pathway then towards each other is very much like this symbol. This is the bridge to this. This is the bridge to this. The whole, this is not a circle, it is a sphere. And the two together working, opposing from each other means that the two parts of the yin and yang are separated. They can't come together. But when there's this awakening that you're my ride home and you're my ride home, I need you, we need to work together, then this becomes seen as a bridge. That's what's meant by the two dots. There is a bridgeway between the two. That is the way home. But it only arises, it only becomes apparent when the consciousness becomes aware of the split, fracture, and dissociation of the duality. And that, when that's conscious and when there's enough imbibing of love, then the two can work their way back together and fusion happens. They can return to the quantum. The quantum is the center. And so, as this path is made, then we become aware of the masculine and the feminine. The other duality of the length and width axes. So in the same respect, as those two come together, as they become aware of each other, they can build the bridge and start to work coming together. And the experience, when the fusion happens, the cracks disappear, the dissociations disappear. You move back into superposition. And that's what we're going to be doing. Once you have those two, then the higher self and lower self. You have enough foundation to bring the higher self and lower self together. So you find home inside of you, you refuse all the splits, dissociations, fractures, and you steward all your parts home. And all these geometries, these points on the geometries, they have diagonals springing out from the center. They're golden radiant lines. The key to the sacred geometry is one, the diamond diagonals. And they're right here, right at the center of that 3-point axis. So as you bring the fusion together of the length and width, and then the z-axis, all of a sudden you have access everywhere. Yes?
That diagram you have in the middle of the whiteboard, right there in the middle, is that where we're talking about the middle of the heart?
Yes. Yes. Yes,
That junction.
And that's the eye of the needle and our throne. When we understand all our split, we are the home for the infinite dualities. And so that means we're the one to navigate all the dualities, which then means it's up to us to steward these back. And it's surrender. Surrender that opens up larger and larger expanses. So we're going to do this exercise. It's a regression exercise. And one last thing I want to show is that by moving in to vulnerability, as I spoke about at the beginning, It's kind of like a flower. A flower has many spirals coming in towards the center and radiating out, so it's like a torus. So here we have the spiraling of the torus, and because the torus fields has many, many different bands on it, many, many different thresholds, like this. And so our screen, as we work with moving into deeper and deeper points of surrender, we access, as you go in, you go out. So as you're surrendering, you access greater expanses of these toroidal fields. And remember, this is constantly in motion. And between each of the petals, we've stored our charges. Just like we've stored them in between each of those geometries, each of the chakras, in the joints, fascia, muscles. They're all coming up now as we're approaching or moving through the treta, and we're taking back up a lot of the unfinished business on the doorstep before we transition into just abiding inside the love. And you'll understand that love as we go through this process. Bringing the dualities together. If we don't bring the dualities together, they remain in competition. They hide their fractures right there, right at the core. So it's up to us to see the 7 roots of unconsciousness at our very core, but as we invite, we build the bridges between the adult and inner child, stand, face, and embrace all of those charges, belief systems, stories, then we integrate them. And that allows us to drop deeper into unconditional love. Oh, this is real. Well, I don't have the internet connection, but you can see this just constantly moving out. I mean, it's a GIF, so it's moving, motion GIF. And that's the same thing as the galaxy. And so that surrender point ties us not just to the solar system, not just to the galaxy, not just to the universal center, but it helps us to stand in source, and then simultaneously in source, we're also screen consciousness as the observer. And that's where we're going. All right, any questions? Yes?
This won't take 13,000 years.
I hope not.
This won't take 13,000 years.
That's good.
So, Ron,
Yes.
going back to the toroidal image you had of the layers of it, right?
Yeah.
Could that also be the layers of our consciousness
Yes.
and the layers of our higher self?
Yes.
So that when I'm speaking with a higher self that is very close to the core, that would that be a higher self of with limitations, but as access to a higher self that has a, I'm going to say it, more freer, embracive.
Right. Each one of these is like an aspect of a higher aspect of your consciousness.
High councils.
Yes, councils meet up here.
Okay.
Well, light councils, dark councils.
So when I talk of councils, really
They're here.
the
They're here.
part
They're Very good question. Very good question. They are, they're sitting in circles here.
Okay.
Yeah. They hold, constructs of the, vectors. I'm responsible for this quadrant. The other one, this one.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're all you.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're all you, and the more we experience the integration of this, then we start pulling in all our parts. We start calling in all our dissociated, separated parts. Because without refusing the transparency, diamond clarity, which is non-duality, non-polarity, absolute compassionate appreciation and understanding for the dualities. And those three are essential before the chalice is reconstructed here. Then you can begin calling more parts of yourself. You start experiencing more of the whole, all the way through the void and all the way through that light, that I, the nothingness, the continuum of integrated consciousness.
And do you feel when someone is doing the inter-child work and they're progressing through it, they develop more trust within themselves?
Yes. You're the steward. We start seeing, I got a little kid. Oh, okay. I'll steward. I'll take care of it. You know what? I just realized I'm the best parent. You know what? I'm the only parent that could answer the questions and care enough for my own inner child. We've been waiting for us to wake up for our stewardship. We're stewards in the garden. These are our dissociated parts. How are you going to navigate them home? Well, first, you got to make peace. And then you start calling all those parts in. And so we're going to do that exercise tonight. And we'll talk more on the other end. Any other questions? Before we take a short, quick break, it's really important to take a potty break, and then I'm probably going to have you guys lie down, okay? This is best done in the most supported, comfortable, warm position for you, okay? And then I'll lead us through the guided, or they will speak through. I'll start, and they'll take over. Yes?
The tube torus, as you tie it in with her question, as the tube torus goes out, so as you go further out, is that more expanded state of consciousness?
Yeah. The more you go in refusing the fractures, splits, dissociations, calling the dualities back, the more transparency and integrity that's held in you, then the magnetism that takes place, it's a conscious magnetism. Everything wants to come back home because they've been out in the cold for a long time searching for love in all the wrong places.
But it's still the total expanded state of consciousness still comes through the eye of the needle.
Yes. Yes.
Keep cycling through.
Yeah, there's going to be a point where we stand right on the membrane. As after we fuse, then we stand on both.
So another question. Since it's continually the smaller tube torus and the expanded tube torus continually flows through the eye of the needle. We're just not conscious of it.
Correct. Correct.
All right. So it's available if we could be conscious of it.
Yes, we veil ourselves from it in our dissociative, unconscious states. We stay distracted. We turn away, looking for our parts externally, rather than turning in, facing the shadows, and coming through these layers all the way to the center. As you navigate all these different larger parts of yourself, the cage dissolves, just like, oh, I didn't say. Well, the work I did after I was the queen on the floor in agony and Isis came in and we're laughing together. I finally got it. Well, that wasn't the end. Because there's a lot of unfinished business, you know, coming up on the other side of that 13,000 year. Well, the 26,000 year. And so I had to go through issue after issue. You know, process, face it, own it. And as I did, then all of a sudden, just like in accepting and integrating the Tempest, that video that was done here, with the Waterloo, where the room disappeared, same thing happened. I'm not tied on the floor anymore in agony. You lift yourself off. You dissolve the entanglements, the belief systems and the emotional that they trap and trap you in the entanglement. Only unconsciousness does that. Consciousness integrates. Unconsciousness separates. So it's huge, big stuff. Oh, that's about the giants. Okay, quick bathroom break and then we'll get in on the regression. Bring our awareness and attention to our breathing, nice and rhythmic, nice and deep. Give yourself permission to let go of all the concerns of the day. Embrace not just your breathing, but all the areas in and around the heart. Each inhale drawing in fresh, pure energy. Releasing tension as you observe the overall condition of the body. If you're holding any tension, invite the release of that tension. Nice, pure, fresh energy. Replacing all the areas of tension in the body. You begin to notice the vital pranic energy suffused in the energy of the air itself. Invite that freshness and it moves to relax, integrate mind and body sensations with the emotion. And we invite vulnerability in and around the heart space, and to aid the sensation, the purity, energy you're breathing. We extend an invitation to the very heart center of Mother Earth. And we invite her presence, not only in our space, within, but filling this entire room. Her purity, golden liquid light. Now emanating in every part of the room. Creating an area of fluidity, purity, and we use the inhale to invite more of that energy, essence, from the heart of the Mother. Where the mind goes, energy follows. So we're bringing our attention to the nuance of that golden liquid light. Each inhale then, observe how it merges and integrates, dissolving all sense of separation and boundary. Allowing purity of your core's essence to come forward. Relaxing into the vulnerability, the building of the communion with the divine all around you. Extending that same energy and essence, embracing each heart here in the room, assisting, supporting, nurturing not only yourself as you accept the Mother's love. Notice the purity of it emanating, sharing, empowering the field of energy, embracing the entire group. That energy supports the greater presence of the Mother. Invite then the depths of her being to stand with all of us. Embrace the core of each heart. Notice the energy dissolving through the pores, the remaining sense of separation and boundary. And now, imagine yourself so supported by this vital energy, shared equanimously throughout all parts in the room, all parts of each other. And now let's imagine ourselves in the most perfect place in nature, lying next to a stream in a mountainous valley. Conditions are perfect. Tree, bird, sunlight. Each inhale, so much of nature fully supporting you. Showering the unconditionality, supporting a deeper sense of vulnerability to arise throughout your heart, chest, lungs, head, body, being. As you take that in and surrender to it, it invites you to deepen the experience. With each inhale, you sense such purity and reverence that it enables you to move deeper into your heart space and notice how it enlivens you. And you sit up and you notice the stream and the sound of nature all around you. And you look and you see nearby a fork in the stream leading to a smaller creek. And you notice that creek leads uphill. And you begin a journey of exploration in these perfect conditions. Heart so wide open. Peace through your being. And as you follow that little creek leading uphill around some boulders, as you round the creek's bend, you notice a cave. And it's such a beautiful cave. The attraction is undeniable. And you notice the creek leads into the cave. And you head towards that cave. Walking along the right side of the creek. The water is so pure and clear. The lighting in the cave is enough for you to see. The cave has so much character. And you keep being drawn down deeper into the cave, and you begin to hear the unmistakable sound of a waterfall. And you head towards it. And you can't help notice how enchanting the cave, creek, waterfall, as you approach it, you see there is a small pond that the waterfall has carved out, and a boulder right there on the edge of the pond, facing the waterfall. And of course, it's perfect and so beautiful that you sit on that boulder. Your feet already bare. You place them in the water. How perfect things are. Waterfall so stunningly beautiful that your heart opens even more. And as the heart opens even more, the beauty deepens. The connection deepens. And you feel something from behind the waterfall. It stirs and magnifies a brightness in the heart. Curiosity. And as you send the feelers of the heart through the waterfall to what may lie behind that waterfall, that's igniting such a brightness in your heart. Just as you ask that, you see a little hand, a tiny hand, human hand, extend out from the waterfall, waving at you just slightly. Of course, you're stunned, but the heart keeps magnifying the inner brightness. And you know there's a relationship here. But what is it? And you extend that invitation to meet each other face to face, to come through the waterfall and expose who you are. What are you? Just as the wave of the heart passes the waterfall, the little being steps out from the water's flow. And there's a recognition, yet a trepidation. For you know this relationship. It's you, your inner child. Feel both hearts, trepidation, wonder and worry. You being the adult, extend the loving invitation to come sit next to me. allow that inner child to sit on the boulder next to you. And with your heart, you can't help but embrace that child. And 1,000 questions come rising in the heart. Yet you remain silent. For you recognize this is the you you've been looking for. Feel the heart. You are the adult. You are the steward. Extend the welcome. Inform the child. I've waited a long, long, long time to meet you. I've finally become fully aware of how much you mean to me. Yet I understand I have not been there for you sufficiently for us to heal what remains between us. I am no longer interested in being distracted from what you mean to me, and I realize all of what you feel, your wounds. I cannot go further until I assist you in healing them, understanding them. For I feel your wounds just as much as you. But now I'm conscious. And I know no one has been there to assist. And so I commit from this moment further. I will no longer be distracted from your needs. I need you to communicate to me when you are feeling any of the wounds that I can assist in integrating the understanding and compassion that's needed. And to prove this, I embrace you now and invite you to move back through the time stream with me. Let us journey back where your wounds exist. Let us move back to 7 years old, 5 years old, 1 year old, back in the womb. Let's take it another step further, but I will need to embrace heart to heart. You and I must be completely trusting. I am here for you. Let's move back to a time before your parents knew you were coming into the world. And let's first observe your mother. Before she knew she was pregnant, you were hanging around, and I am here with you. Mother Earth, embracing each of us. Feel the support. Open the heart. And check. What was your mother's hopes and dreams before she knew you were pregnant? What was the relationship like between her and your father? Check carefully. And observe how was her relationship with her mother and father. Nothing to fear, just feel what you are feeling. Everything you felt was valid. How did you respond to their feelings about the relationship between the parents and your mother and father? And now, let's observe your father. What are his hopes and dreams? How did he feel about your mother? What was his relationship like between his parents? What do you feel? Did you make any stories here? Assumptions, beliefs? And now let's move a little forward into the time stream. Your mother knew first. The advent of your coming into the world. How did that news affect her? Were there worries? How did she feel about having to tell your father? About her father and mother? What were her worries? Remember, you are being supported by your adults and Mother Earth. An absolute unconditional love. What stories did you make? from your mother's reaction? Did it change her hopes and dreams? Did it change her relationship with her parents? With your father? What did you feel? Was there a story, a feeling that you created about you and about their situation? And now let's observe your father. The moment he received the news that he was going to be a father, how did he respond? Did it change the relationship with your mother? With his parents? How did they take it? How did you respond to his reaction? And now let's rejoin the time stream through the gestation, the 9 months. Many feelings, many stories, many things are changing. How are you responding? What assumptions, stories, and feelings are arising? And now let's continue on the time stream to when you're 5 years old. How much has your mother's dreams and reality changed? Her relationships, her emotional state, level of worry, pressure. And your father's? How much of this did you take on your shoulders? How much did you bring forward into your relationship with your parents, peers, school, world? Dear one, none of your stories or feelings are invalid. They are wholly appropriate. You can see from my eyes and heart that I too would have felt the same way if I was in your position. So nothing is wrong. But let's look at it into what you experienced from another perspective, one that might be more healing. Your parents did as best as they could while facing the challenges that they saw, felt, experienced as overwhelming. Nobody taught them the consciousness you have. The ability to keep your mind and heart open to such a degree that you can see clearly. From a more understanding perspective. And this is what I'm here to assist you with as your adult. We can reframe what we experienced. With the compassionate understanding and appreciation for what you misunderstood or took on yourself and blamed yourself as being the responsible party for what choices your parents made. Assumptions far too vast for your little eyes to see. You are not the owner of the belief system. You experienced it. It's yours, but it is not you. Feel the love then, the compassionate understanding and appreciation emanating from the adult to the heart of the inner child. Embrace that inner child. Communicate to that child, I will never separate from you again. I will be here to assist. In understanding and integrating all the incompletely processed stories, beliefs, and their emotions. In my heart and in my embrace and in my consciousness, I will always assist the disentangling of what you could not have known. And so let's join together and follow the time stream. Feeling the connection now, the bridge built, the hearts merged. Move back the time stream all the way to the moment when you went unconscious. You don't have a body. You simply went unconscious. And so at that moment of unconsciousness, you began a process, searching throughout the void separation reality, the time stream, and the probabilities, searching for the assumed missing parts. So here, standing in the void, at the moment of unconsciousness, darkness, stretching across the continuum, how do you feel? There is no separation, for you're conscious of your integrated part. The part you've been searching for, your duality, right here within you, the aspect of the inner child and the adult. Now integrated, you stand here, conscious, and yet in the time stream, the moment of unconsciousness. This is the point of the twist in the balloon of Purusha and void. Turn around metaphorically from the darkness, and all there is the great I, the one I. Holding the boundary between consciousness and unconsciousness. So let's go back now, following the time stream. Back into the cave. Back on the boulder. Inner child next to you. Waterfall in front, feet in the water. All is perfect. Notice there is no pining. Completeness of sitting with your separated part finally awoken, emerged, bonded now by trust. You look down at the little child just as the child looks at you. And the child communicates to you. There's something I want to show you. And it points once again to the waterfall. And you extend the vulnerability of your heart through the cascading waters to the other side. Again, the brightness begins and a trepidation. You know there's something on the other side. It's huge, profound. invitation to show yourself, show itself. And once again, a little hand reaches out past the water's flow. And it's mind-boggling. How could this be? What is this? And you invite the rest of it to show itself. And so it leads out of the waterfall, towing in hand, an adult. It's a child and an adult. And they're both opposite to your gender. You remain inside of that equanimity, vulnerability, sacredness. And even though there's the trepidation, there's such a familiarity, and you open your heart and invite the heart of the two beings to engage your heart. And you motion them closer. And as they come closer to the boulder, your eyes lock. And the heart, seeing through the being before you, feels such an expanse, an immensity, a connection. Though opposite, it's complete, stretching in an opposite way across the continuum. For as far as you can probe with your heart's feeling, it's probing into you. And you take a moment to acclimate. The immeasurability of this opposite of you. Merge heart, consciousness, beingness. And as you do, separation and boundary dissolves. Magnetically, you're drawn into the time stream, back to that point, the point of unconsciousness, the point of original separation. And as you're merged, extend the heart throughout the entire void. yourself everywhere and nowhere. Everything and nothing. Yet, there is no separation, no dissociation, no split, no fracture, no polarization across the great depths and the continuum of the void. There you are, everywhere. Difference being is you're not looking for separated parts. That is ended.